In Malaysia, there are three terms which people often confuse: dialect, accent, and slang. We use them interchangeably, but we often don't realize that they are actually related but different things altogether. Now, a dialect would refer to specific words or specific vocabulary that reflects a certain area, a certain region. For example, in the Kelantanese dialect, you have words like tubik, you have words like kelik. It is worth noting here that it refers to words that are unique to these regions. Now, if let's say you have the word make, it still sounds like makan, because you still have the ma over there, but words like tubik and kelik sound nothing like keluar and pergi. So these are dialectal words. An accent, on the other hand, refers to a way you pronounce things. It can be based on, for example, your region. For example, Kelantanese will pronounce makan as make. Someone from Terengganu will pronounce makan as makang. Air, for example. Someone from Kedah will say ayak. People from Perak Tengah will say ayo. So these are accents, and they represent where you come from. They can also be based on social class, although in Malaysia we don't really have that in the Malay language. We do have that in the UK. For example, in the news, you have a very upper class BBC standard style English, but as you go into places like Manchester, they speak in a very, you would say, village kind of way, which is perceived as a lower class version of English. So what is slang then? Slang refers to shortened language, S for short and lang for language. Now, slangs are normally used by particular social groups, normally youths, to represent their camaraderie or kekitaan basically, alright? For example, let's say, a group of so-called rempits, hope you're not offended, they will use words like, for example, buat apa tu skunk. They have their variation of those words. Or for example, among some of the divas, they say Uolls or Uolls. So these are slang words. So the next time you hear people saying, dialect, accent, and slang, make sure you know what word you are using at that particular time. Now, slangs are normally verbal. However, with the advent of social media, it is now being typed out. That's why you have messages typing, for example, buat as BWAD, or for example, aku as AQ, for instance. That's slang. So the thing is now, is it wrong to have a dialect? Is it wrong to have an accent? So it's not exactly wrong to use a dialect or slang. It represents who you are. It's your identity, whether it's where you're from or what particular country or state that you associate yourself with. What is wrong is to discriminate people based on their accent. It is wrong to look down people just because they have a Sabahan accent. Let's just celebrate identities. It represents their culture. It represents their worldview. What matters more in English is whether you pronounce things correctly. Of course, words like three, tiga, and three, pokok, are two different things. But if it's a word like, for example, better and better, no matter how you pronounce it, it's the same thing. It doesn't confuse anyone at all. There are no problems with accents. So pronunciation is influenced by accent. However, it doesn't really deter in understanding. Because if you look at how accent affects words, it doesn't really change the meaning. Whereas, for example, if a dialect, there's a difference in the word completely. When it comes to dialects, it is not to be used in formal situations. Dialects are always to be used in informal settings, in conversational settings. Of course, in a formal setting, you want to use the standard version of a dialect, the standard version of the accent, and of course, you want to avoid slang as much as possible. But if you were to use that, it doesn't mean you're weak at the language. If your accent is very thick, it doesn't mean you're not capable at speaking at all.